Good morning, cellists. Well, today is the last lesson on minuets, and I'm going to remind you about your warm-ups. So reminding you about your left hand pizzicato as you might move your head up and around like this. Now in my example I didn't add the dynamics. Did you spot it? You add the dynamics. Adding on to the technical items I've given you this week, this morning we're going to look at the dominant seventh in the key of G, being the key of the suite we're looking at. This means the dominant is a fifth above our tonic, or the keynote. So if the keynote is G, easy peasy for us to find, it's a fifth above, we're tuned in fifths. So it's going to be an arpeggio beginning on a D, and that D is the dominant note. So if you took a standard D major arpeggio, which we've already looked at this week, and that's with a standard fingering, unlike the one I gave you earlier, we just add in one extra note. We add in a minor seventh. In this case, it's a C natural, like this. And you'll notice that we don't go back to the low D at the very end, but we resolve to the key, which is G. Now, just to have a look, see what that looks like in slow motion here. One stretch 4-1, part of your D major. At this point, close your fourth finger into a natural position. And if we're taking standard fingering, open 3 open. And then here we put the second finger down for the C. And then arrive on a G. Voila. I'm now going to show you the same dominant seventh arpeggio, but with the solution that's in line with the arpeggio solution I gave you earlier this week. This is where in the second octave we will move into second position. Here's how it looks. That was the same as before, but now instead of 3, place a 1 on the F sharp, like you have been for your arpeggio. Now this first finger stretches back a semitone for C natural. Your second finger is still remaining where it was in the rest of the hand, and it's on the D. There we have it. That's again a useful item in Bach for the whole of the suite, in fact. Now moving onwards, we're going to look at the final line of Feuillard's exercise number 6. So the bow stroke is just going to continue to be full length bows across the strings, and at this point we're, as per the previous lesson, we're on the lower 2 strings and middle 2. So that's the bow pattern without the fingers. Now in this last line, the chords are interesting, unusual. We have an E, a B flat and a G, which makes a diminished triad. And then we change one finger only. So my second finger I remove to reveal my first finger on the G string, and here we have which in actual fact is an A7 chord without a C sharp being present, which is like, for those who want to know the theory, the dominant of this key. Okay, so A7 chord in second inversion. Here it is again. And then we move into the third bar. The fourth finger stays where it is, and I'm barring my first finger across the lower 2 strings, like so. And this is actually a D major chord with a suspension on it, with a fourth. It's called a 4/3 suspension is what we're actually approaching here. So instead of an F sharp for D major. We're waiting for a resolution, which is exactly what happens in the next bar. So those last two bars together, your ear anticipates, it wants to hear the G fall to the the F sharp. And then the final note is the home note, the home key note at the end. It sounds slightly weak, I must admit, in the writing at that moment. It would be nice if it was a full chord. Anyway, that full line, diminished triad, A7, and then a D4, and then just a regular D, and finally G. These are the chord structures. But you can just read the music, put the right fingers down, and you'll get it. One other little extra goodie in this is that between the second and third bar of this last line, we might preempt the barring a quaver early, as we have done previously in the study. Let's watch and see. There it is. Right, so today we look at the second section of the second minuet of the first suite. Now, I gave you earlier this week a diminished seventh arpeggio, because it's going to help us, especially in this second section of this minuet. So it does actually begin with a part of that diminished arpeggio. Begins with these notes, and in there you hear, which was a tiny fragment of that very diminished seventh that I've given you. Now the finger solution, I'm staying initially in first position so that you have a concrete grounding, you know where you are. Then from this open string, instead of putting my second finger on the C, you move, put first finger on the C. That solves the rest of the bar. Into the following bar, stretch your second finger back to the C in the normal position, so that you're ready for that B flat also stretched. That's a little 2-bar fragment, and it's answered by this, which is very standard fingering with a stretch of the B flats, and into the following bar. But here, instead of the open A, move, fourth position. It's really for a change of colour. You can solve it with here. Absolutely fine, but I think it's quite nice to add in a bit of warmth and colour and change at this point. I'll show you those first 4 bars again of the second section. And at this point we have a really lovely sequence, and I want you to really focus on the ya da da. Here we have it. Now, did you notice that the are resolved in 2 different places? But you want to make sure that your intonation is spot on, and the B flat here. And if you really focus on that little tiny element, I think you'll find that you'll shift cleanly and get the tuning. I mean, one of my top tips for moving back into half position is all about macro moves of the arm. So here, as you go back, your elbow, if I exaggerate, up and back, it should lead the shift. At this point, rather than a 4 on the D, we're going to shift to a 3, so that you can resolve the following 2 notes. And then we take advantage of the slur pattern here, shift back a semitone to the 4th finger D, and remaining stretched first finger on this B flat for a lovely B flat arpeggio. Another thing to consider as you come into that cadence, into B flat, is a nice flat bow hair as you cross the string for that broken chord or arpeggio. Now a magic moment here. After the B flat resolution, stay on the string with the bow, so you really make the most of the incredible turnaround to move from B flat to B natural. And we're now looking at another diminished chord. It's very, very similar to the first bar of this section. So we have, in slow motion here, 3 open 2, move to a 4. Then you can go back to your E flat, stretch 4. Now here is a telescope in. So where your second finger is at this point, you want to move your first to that place to resolve the rest of that little cell. We then go back to standard first position, stretch. Those 2 bars are quite nice and straightforward, so maybe aim for those if you find the others hard, so that you can get the feel of it and the sound of it. Now, the next note, if you notice, I'm keeping my 4th finger on the D that I've just played. It's a relevant geographic point. We want to move to an F sharp on the C string. Now, if we think relatively, my 4th finger travelled across with a rotation would give me an F natural. I need to move a semitone above it, and I should have my F sharp here. It is. And it's also right on the exact same solution as the diminished arpeggio I've given you. Here's the second note of the one I've given you. F sharp, F sharp, A, C, E flat. Exactly those notes in the diminished chord I've given you. And then we stay here. And then you can go back to a 2 if you find it comfortable, you know where you are. Second finger on B flat. Open D, 1 on the G. Stay there. Stay there, hop across. Stay there. Open. Now my first finger's currently on a G. I slip back a semitone. Easy, when you know how. So from bar 17 we have now the observant of you might have noticed that actually in bar 22 I solved the B flat going back to a 1. It's whatever you're comfortable with. And that concludes the second minuet. I'll just play through that section and then I shall be uploading the pair of minuets with their full repeats and the da capo as a separate video. So we have Thank you very much for watching. Take care. Bye for now.